In the spring of 1212, thousands of young people across France and Germany left their homes and began walking south toward the Mediterranean Sea. They believed God had chosen them to succeed where the adult crusaders had failed, to reclaim the Holy Land through faith rather than violence. Many were adolescents, some were children. Their leaders were charismatic boys who claimed to have received divine visions. According to the sources, they believed the sea would part before them, as it had for Moses, and they would walk to Jerusalem on dry land. The sea did not part. What happened to them instead is one of the most disturbing and poorly documented episodes of the medieval period. The problem with the Children's Crusade begins with the sources themselves. No contemporary chronicle provides a reliable, complete account. The earliest references are brief mentions in monastic annals, often written decades after the events. The fullest accounts date from the late 13th century, more than 60 years later, and they contradict each other on nearly every major detail. How many participants there were, who led them, what route they took, and what happened when they reached the coast. Even the name is misleading. The Latin word pueri, translated as children, could also mean the rural poor, young people, or simply common folk. The crusade may not have been composed primarily of children at all. What the sources generally agree on is that two separate movements occurred, one in France and one in Germany, and that neither achieved anything resembling its goal. The French movement was reportedly led by a shepherd boy named Stephen of Cloyes, who claimed that Christ had appeared to him disguised as a pilgrim and given him a letter for the King of France. Stephen gathered followers, possibly numbering in the thousands, and led them to the port city of Marseille. According to later accounts, two merchants named Hugh the Iron and William the Pig offered to transport the group across the Mediterranean for free. Some sources say the ships were wrecked in a storm near Sardinia, drowning many of the passengers. Others say the merchants delivered the young crusaders directly to slave markets in North Africa, where they were sold. The merchants in this telling had been working with Muslim traders from the beginning. The German movement, led by a boy named Nicholas of Cologne, followed a different route. Nicholas led his followers south across the Alps toward Italy, apparently heading for the port of Genoa. The journey across the mountains was devastating. Hunger, exposure, and exhaustion reduced the group significantly before they reached Italy. When they arrived at Genoa, the sea did not part. Some accounts say a portion of the group continued south to Rome, where Pope Innocent III reportedly told them to go home and return when they were old enough to fight. Others say the group simply disintegrated, with survivors settling in Italian towns or dying along the road home. The historical consensus today is that the Children's Crusade was real, in the sense that large groups of young and poor people did attempt unauthorized pilgrimages toward the Holy Land in 1212, but that the details have been so distorted by later chroniclers that separating fact from legend is nearly impossible. The slave ship story is widely doubted by modern historians, partly because it appears only in late sources, and partly because it fits too neatly into anti-Muslim narrative conventions of medieval Christian writing. The mountain crossing and the failure at the coast are considered more plausible. What is historically significant about the Children's Crusade is not what happened, but what it reveals about the society that produced it. By 1212, the crusading movement had been underway for over a century. Two major crusades had recently failed. The adults had proven unable to hold Jerusalem.
Into this atmosphere of frustration
and religious fervor came the idea that innocence itself was the weapon that had been missing, that God would intervene for the pure of heart, where he had refused to intervene for the corrupt. It was a theology of desperation, and it sent thousands of vulnerable people onto roads they would never return from. The Children's Crusade left no monuments, no conquered territory, and no heroes. It left only scattered references in monastic records and a question that still unsettles. What kind of society convinces its youngest and most vulnerable members that walking into the unknown is a sacred duty, and then lets them go?